Good afternoon, Mr. Ganeshan. Good to see you.
Nice, sir. Nice.
Thank you.
No, you mean
Now, Rohini Madam is the host.
Thank you, Nawaz. Could you also, okay, I can do that. Right.
Hi, Sundar.
Hi, Ajit. Just finished a class, came rushing after that. I had a class between 2:30 and 4. Didn't want to miss this, so I came, finished exactly
glad you
3:50. Yeah, 3:55 and a cup of tea and back here. Namaskaram, sir. Pathinalache. All good?
all fine, sir.
Good.
Would you allow us a few minutes? Dr. Reddy is just joining. Good evening, Sundar sir.
Hi, Rohini. How are you?
Super. Sleepy, but good.
Hi,
see
Lorna.
that.
Good to see you.
I can see that.
Hi, good to see everyone too. Why is Rohini sleepy?
Yep.
Isn't
Yes,
what
I
Had a
happened?
long week.
Okay.
Late
Hard
night.
work, huh?
Late
Hard
night.
work.
It was,
That's
thank God
okay
it's
then.
Friday yesterday.
Nice shirt, Ajit.
Ah, thank you. Very, very, very old shirt, but a favorite.
But good.
Going to call him one more time just to figure out if he will join.
Yeah, I'm there already. Yes.
Our chairperson is joined. Welcome, Dr. Janardhan Reddy.
You.
Dr. Joseph, shall we begin?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, chairperson, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just going to make ask
Shall
for
we
the code.
Shall we start?
I think you
Yes,
need
Chair,
to,
please go ahead.
I think you probably need to unmute me and also start the video. I'm not able to.
Your mute is not there now.
And you're also a co-host now, Mr. Vijay.
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Janardhan.
My video is not on, I think. Some problem.
Oh, now
Hi, Janardhan. Good to see you. We wish to see you, but I can hear you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, I was telling them that my video is not on. I don't know what.
Correct. I can hear you, but video is not seen.
So, but here everything is okay because
Yes.
There you go.
All right.
Shall we start?
Yes, Chaitra, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 19th lecture in the Golden Jubilee lecture series organized by the Medico Pastoral Association, Bangalore. I'm Chaitra Shrikeyas, counselor at the Medico Pastoral Association, who will be the master of ceremonies for today's function. As most of you are aware, the Medico Pastoral Association registered in 1972 as the first non-governmental mental health organization in India and is credited with pioneering work in the field of rehabilitation of persons with mental illness. Locally and nationally, MPA is well renowned for its contributions to the field of community mental health, particularly in the area of educating people about mental health issues. This year marks 50 years of distinguished service and achievement that the Medico Pastoral Association wishes to celebrate with everyone. one of the many programs being organized to celebrate this Golden Jubilee year as a series of lectures that will be conducted each month. Today, we are delighted to have Mr. Vijay Nallawala, founder, Bipolar India Managing Trustee, Mental Health Support Foundation, to deliver the 19th lectures in this series. This lecture will be followed by a brief Yes. This lecture will be followed by a brief question and answer session to be moderated by the session chair, Professor Vijay Janardhan Reddy, Head Department of Psychiatry and OCD Clinic, Nimans. Now we have invocation from Ms. Chitra and Ms. Rashmi A.G. Now I would like to request our residents to lead the group in prayer. Over to you.
Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is hatred, bring your power and love. And where there is doubt, true faith in you. Oh, Master, grant that we never see. So much to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, it's only light. Where there is sadness, yet joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see. So much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It's in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive. And in dying that we are born to eternal life. Oh, Master, grant that we can see. So much to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul.
Yes, I would like to extend my thanks. Now, I would like to call upon Ms. Rohini Rajav, Chairperson of Academic Public Service and Publication Committee and a member of the Managing Committee of MBA, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chester. Good afternoon, everybody. I extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you on this hot and sunny afternoon on the end of August to the 19th Golden Jubilee Lecture organized by the Medico Pastoral Association. I would like to extend my first welcome to our guest speaker, Mr. Vijay Nallawala, who's the founder of Bipolar India and the managing trustee of Mental Health Support Foundation. Welcome, Mr. Vijay. We look forward to your lecture and to hearing the answers to all the questions that all of us will have ready for you. I extend a very, very warm welcome to Professor Vijay Janardhan Reddy, Head Department of Psychiatry and OCD Clinic. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us today to moderate the session. I welcome all the managing committee members, the life members, our residents, parents, family, and all well-wishers who encourage us in this Golden Jubilee lecture series. You are the reason why our lectures, Golden Jubilee finale completing last week. I would like to thank all of you who came to MPA for the program as well. And we look forward to a long stint of the Golden Jubilee lecture series. My special welcome to Dr. Joseph George, our president, Dr. Ajit Vijay, our vice president, and all our senior members. Thank you so much for being a part of the lecture series month after month. And I look forward to more successful lectures going forward. Thank you so much. Over to you, Chetra.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I would welcome Dr. Joseph George, the Honorable President of MPA. Sir, I thank you for your presence and request that you give an overview of MPA and the guest lecture series. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chitra, for the time. Good afternoon, friends and our guests. The Medico Pastoral Association Bangalore is the premier NGO in India providing short-term and long-term residential care for the mentally ill and providing support for their families. Besides, the MBA is committed to providing educational and awareness programs promoting mental health in the community at large. MBA was founded in 1964 and formally registered as a society in 1972. Dr. Joy Shiromani, a medical doctor, was the first secretary, founder secretary, and then with her team, she managed a lot of work in those 60s and 70s. It all began when a small group of doctors, social workers, laypersons, and clergymen at St. Mark's Cathedral saw the plight of people around the city because with the urbanization, there were a lot of people without necessary basic necessities, and they began what is called the industrial mission. And the industrial vision was to address the crisis situations, help people who are in crisis, provide assistance where required, and out of that came over 6-7 years came the need for assisting and helping the mentally ill. Hence, the Medico Pastoral Association was formed. So their concerns, efforts, and activities contributed to the birth of this NGO, the first of its kind in India. Over the last 50 years, MBA has pioneered and spearheaded numerous activities and innovative programs on mental health, most of them for the first time in the country. These include the starting of an Alcoholic Anonymous group, a suicide prevention program, which included the training of lay volunteers, starting of the first halfway home for the mentally ill, and then particularly focusing on people with serious mental disorders. The telephone helplines that continue to work at MBA in the name of Sahai, which is popularly, people seek help at the time of crisis and difficulties, especially with reference to suicide prevention. MBA is committed to continue working towards rehabilitation aimed at integration of persons with mental disorders into the mainstream society, which means bringing them back to the everyday life with the motto of recovery, re-socialization, and resettlement. And to a great extent, MBA has done this, justice to that motto which they began in the 60s and 70s. Enhancement of mental health literacy at the community level and the reduction of stigma and discrimination towards mental disorders through a variety of educational and awareness building programs aimed at helping the community at large. So along with the residential home, MBA had been consistent with its work towards looking at the health of the community at large. And we have come to a stage where, celebrating the Golden Jubilee, the last 1 year, under the leadership of Dr. Mohan Isaac. Recently, we had a visit of our Minister for Health and Family Welfare, Sri Gururao, he said, 50 years ago you started mental health. You know, that was the time this was too difficult. How much of sacrifice people done. I think that's a true testimony that we could hear. Many people come and gone through this place. Their testimony, MBA is a place where they could trust and get help. So with the Golden Jubilee celebrations, we started about more than a year ago, and the special feature was the monthly lectures on various topics, focusing on rehabilitation, recovery, and promoting mental health. And today I am pleased to listen to Mr. Vijay Nallawala, who is again somebody very important for all of us. So this is a short, brief account of MBA. And at this time, we are also looking at, the long support care project, which is still in the initial stage of our discussions. And we request all your support, care, and prayers. Thank you so much. Back to Chitra.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Now I again call upon Ms. Rohini Rajab to introduce Session Chair, Professor Y.C. Janardhan Reddy.
Thank you so much, Chaitra. I'm here once again to welcome and introduce our most eminent chairperson, Professor Y.C. Janardhan Reddy, who is currently the head of Department of Psychiatry and OCD Clinic at NIMHANS in Bangalore. Dr. Reddy's areas of interest lie in bipolar disorders as well as obsessive compulsive disorders, with special interest in the management and treatment of OCD. His research has been funded by several organizations from ICMR to DBT, DST, CIHR Canada, with an ROE grant from NIMH USA as well. Dr. Reddy is a WHO work group member on the OCRD for ICD-11. He's a lead author of the IPS Clinical Practice Guidelines on OCD and on CBT and anxiety disorders, OCD and related disorders. He's a member of the International Enigma OCD Work Group. He's a visiting professor of the Commonwealth Research Fellow at Oxford, 1999 to 2000. He's a recipient of the Sir C.V. Raman State Award for the Young Scientist for the year of 2011 by the government of Karnataka, and a lot more. An important, I can see Lorna smiling. Yes, our chairperson is an absolute stellar in the field of psychiatry. A notable fact is that Professor Y.C. Janardhan Reddy's 195 research work with 5,431 citations and 20,892 reads includes the metabolic regulation to treat bipolar depression. So there is absolutely no doubt about why he is the chairperson today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you, sir, and welcome you to please chair the session. Handing it over to you, Dr. Janardhan Reddy.
Thank you so much, and also thank you so much for a very generous introduction. I am honored to chair this particular session on the occasion of Golden Jubilee Lecture Series. Mr. Vijay Nallawala is going to speak today on polar journeys, the highs and lows of bipolar disorder, particularly the lived experience and self-help that he has kind of established himself over the years. Now, as the title itself says, bipolar disorder obviously is an illness which starts often at a very young age. While we all are taught that it is characterized by mania and depression, which occurs in cyclical fashion, and we completely recover, we have a nice life after that. And historically, bipolar disorder or manic depressive illness was distinguished from schizophrenia by the fact that it runs an cyclical course with complete normalcy in between the episodes. But over the decades, we have learned that bipolar disorder or manic depressive illness, as it used to be called, is as devastating as schizophrenia, and it is not entirely true, although it's partly true that it runs an episodic course. Illness tends to become very chronic, recurrent, and people who are not in an episode also have very prominent depression all along. Sometimes the combination of both high and low periods simultaneously. In fact, there are other forms of bipolar disorders which are being recognized, most softer versions, where depression is more prominent than the high periods. In fact, such people even sometimes like the high periods because there is a relief from their low periods. But then essentially, bipolar disorder is a disorder of depression actually and less of mania, because as the illness progresses, you have more of depression and less of high periods. And it's known to occur even in children, and it has not just impact on one's family life and occupational life and on the society at large, but also it is increasingly recognized that a bipolar disorder also can cause various kind of cognitive disturbance over a period of time. So it is in this context that, you know, a symptomatic recovery, that you are not having symptoms alone, is not enough, and increasingly people are talking about functional recovery, and that's, I think, what Mr. Vijay Nallawala is going to really emphasize today. Functional recovery essentially means you actually get reintegrated into society just like anybody else. I think that's what Dr. Joseph Judge was saying, that you not only symptomatically recover, but then you do everything else as everybody else does. Now, how much and what proportion of people achieve this is a matter of debate, but that is really the goal. And I'm sure Mr. Vijay Nallawala is really want to emphasize on that aspect. Although typically, you know, bipolar disorder treatment revolves around medications, but then medication treatment itself is already determined by many psychological and social factors. And increasingly, over the last 2-3 decades, we have realized how important it is for the psychological therapies to help in the recovery process. In fact, people who only prescribe medicines and then leave that part, I don't think people really recover well. Psychological interventions are as important as medication treatments, even in disorders such as bipolar disorder, where medications play a very, very important role. Now, coming to the first person accounts, I think Ajit and Dr. Kalyan Sundaram, all of us know that, for example, Schizophrenia Bulletin, even today, I think, publishes the first person accounts of illnesses. And although it may be one illness, but each person's experience is very different from others, because after all, it's the individual who is suffering, and just a label of a diagnosis does not really help giving the full account of what's actually happening. And there have been several first person accounts of bipolar disorder, including the famous Unquiet Mind by Jamieson, Professor Jamieson, who is also an author of the famous book called Manic Depressive Illness, an authoritative book on bipolar disorder, along with Professor Jamieson. And we have recently had a book by Aparna Peramal Rajan titled Chemical Khichdi, How I Hacked My Mental Health. And then, you know, the famous book by Jerry Pinto, M and the Big Whom, which won the Hindu Literary Prize Award. So there have been several accounts of bipolar disorder illnesses. Mr. Vijay Nallawala has himself authored a book, Bipolar Journey from Torment to Fulfillment. And he was mentioning the other day that he's planning to revise it and republish it again. I welcome him to do that, because there is, I'm sure, from the first edition to the subsequent edition, his own perception of the illness or what it actually means to him or to society at large would have changed over a period of time. I think it's time that he works on that. I take this opportunity to thank MPA for having allowed me to chair this session, and I welcome Mr. Vijay Nallawala to talk about highs and lows of bipolar disorder, his lived experience, and how much self-help really matters in the recovery process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. You have summarized so well what the illness looks like. You have set the context for the talk, and I thank MPA for this splendid opportunity to share my experiences and a broad overview of what bipolar disorder looks like from lived experience. Right. So before I start my presentation, I would like to share a little bit about what I experienced bipolar disorder like, what it was in my own journey. So it was May 2003, 20 years ago, when I was lying down in bed in a hospital bed at Holy Spirit Hospital, when I had been diagnosed with what was then known as manic depressive illness. And my world lay in tatters around me, because diagnosis of a severe mental illness back then, when there was even a greater vacuum around mental illnesses, the stigma was much more. It was quite devastating for me. All the diagnosis happened when I was at age 40. There was a long history before that, which lay untraced and undiagnosed and untreated. All right. So, and there is a little bit, it's an interesting story how I was diagnosed in the first place. So it had been a period of upheaval for, I think, around 1 or 2 years when my, caregiving sister, I would call her, she was the primary observer about my condition. She was a sharp human being. She noticed there was something very, very much out of place, that my changes in moods and my behavior, my erratic decisions, that my grandiose ideas didn't seem at all a normal person's thinking. And that is why uh, somehow she convinced me to accompany her to meet a psychologist. In that session with the psychologist, I was already in peak mania and blabbering along, expressing ridiculous ideas. She listened to me for a few minutes and then straight away said that you have come to the wrong professional, that you need the help of a psychiatrist. And my sister, being the resourceful person she already had sought an appointment with a noted psychiatrist in Mumbai. And we rushed to the psychiatrist. In that episode, it was easy to make a clear, point out to a diagnosis, because mania is very easy to spot, because otherwise bipolar disorder also can be misdiagnosed as depression or some other disorders on the spectrum. But my disorder was easy to spot because of the symptoms, and straight away I was rushed to hospital. Now, as I said, this was not where the journey had begun. So it would be difficult for the audience here to believe that the onset had begun at the age of somewhere around 12, 13. And it was only when I was 14 when I really realized that there was something drastically wrong happening to me. I couldn't put a finger to it. The signs were of severe depression, accompanied by paranoia also. And I was in my critical 10th boards exam, facing my 10th boards exams. Somehow with pluck and resilience, I used to clear those exams without any issue. And these episodes used to keep recurring in a cycle of 1.5 or 2 years. And family could also not realize what was happening to me. Their thought was that it could be hormonal changes that are associated with adolescence, and it was passed away, as that. I was taken to physicians and they administered vitamin B12 injections, thinking it was something to do with vitamin deficiency. So that was a lack of awareness back then. So the era I'm talking about is somewhere in the late 70s. So if you go back then, this was a situation. How mental health was, sort of neglected back then. All right. So even after the diagnosis, my clawing back to recovery, as we may call it, wasn't that simple. So let me share my presentation now. Yeah. Okay. So, see my PPT show all windows. All right. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen here? Is it visible?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes,
Yes,
it's
sir.
visible. Yes.
All right.
You need to go
And
to
it's in full
slideshow.
screen, and it's in full screen mode, right?
Slideshow. You go to slideshow.
Yeah, that's what I will. To me, it's visible as a full screen. Okay, I'll do it as a slideshow. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, this was the title of the book Dr. Janardhan Reddy also was referring to. And my life journey sort of resonates a lot with this title. From torment to fulfillment is what it was very much like. So what happened during the 26 years when I wasn't diagnosed? So the episodes of severe depression used to get worse by after each cycle, and they affected me even during my college when I was doing my commerce graduation, and subsequently when I joined our family enterprise. But thankfully the episodes used to last for 6 months or so, and then it led to a normalized sort of a mood. So as I said, I would have been around 38 or something when the really escalated mood swings began, where the other people started noticing my erratic behavior, and it led to my diagnosis. I think for all people living with chronic or severe mental illnesses, this is what the journey looks like. At some points of time, during this process, we are a victim, then we become a survivor, because there is no other way than, sort of accept the situation and deal with the challenges. And then the so-called stage of warrior, where we sort of come to terms with the condition and are able to function and be like anybody else without the condition. These were the key components of my own recovery journey. I call them the ABCD of recovery. I think any recovery journey cannot begin without acceptance. I think that is quite evident to, I guess, could be to everybody. Why that is so? Because unless you accept that you have a condition, that it needs to be treated, you cannot take any step forward from there. To me, belief also was equally important, because self-belief gets crushed when the diagnosis happens. You lose all the sense of hope. The sense of helplessness is overwhelming. At that time, that inner conviction that you are going to sort of outlive this difficult period and sort of recover, claw your way back to recovery is a very important, mindset to have. Cooperation is cannot be stressed enough, and cooperation would mean with cooperation with your mental health professionals, your psychiatrists, your the psychotherapists, even physicians, if you have got any physical comorbidities along with it, and of course with your family carers. It's important that the whole team works together in this process. And talking about discipline, self-discipline is critical. And what do I mean by discipline? This is what a typical day looks like for me. It begins with 40 minutes of pranayam practice and a reflective practice. 1 hour of workout at the gym. I have a diet which is customized by a nutritionist. I try to follow a structure as much as possible, because structure helps in managing bipolar disorder or any other mood disorder for that matter. And I keep myself occupied in work and try to be as focused as possible. Regular sleep hours cannot be stressed enough, because sleep cycles, the circadian rhythm, as we say, that helps in maintaining moods, and vice versa. Any disruption in sleep cycles can be a trigger for mood shifts. One needs to be also engaged in the lighter side of life. For me, my hobbies and passion is reading, music, indulgence in a bit of sport. I'm an avid learner, meeting people. These are the things which sort of round me up as a person. I think in addition to the medication and the therapeutic approach, there's a psychotherapy approach that we talk about. This kind of a discipline has helped me a lot in sustaining my recovery journey. What is my understanding of bipolar disorder? Early intervention is key to better outcomes. That is for all severe mental illnesses, and no different in bipolar disorder. I believe that my delay in diagnosis and treatment made the struggle more intense even after the treatment began. A good psychiatrist is like a lifesaver, I would say. And I had the good fortune of a fantastic psychiatrist right at the beginning of my treatment process. And he was caring, attentive, and of course, competent. Dr. Reddy already spoke about how in bipolar disorder, medication is fundamental to the recovery process, functionality, and recovery. The need for sleep varies according to the mood phase of bipolar disorder. During depression, there might be excessive need for sleep. And even after sleeping for 9, 10, or 11 hours, the person might still feel lethargic and drowsy. And it's exactly the opposite during the elevated mood phases in hypomania, mania, where people go for days without even sleeping for an hour. That is how drastic the difference is. Energy levels also similarly swing in a pendulum with the mood phase. Energy is completely drained out during the depression phase, and there is excess energy during the elevated mood phases of hypomania and mania. Dr. Reddy already talked about how there is a misconception that it is only about extreme mood swings, and then there is just normalcy in between. So there are challenges during the so-called normal mood phases also. And one of the major challenges is cognitive dysfunction, the inability to focus, concentrate, be productive at work, memory challenges with memory, and so on. This is another myth that I would like to bust. Sometimes we sort of medicalize a condition to an extent where we sort of overlook all the other factors that contribute to a person's manifestation of an illness and even in the recovery process. Just as there are positive factors, there are also factors which assist in the process of recovery. So it's not just biology, it's biology, psychology, the social environment that a person lives in. And to my mind, it's also the spiritual angle, which is very rarely spoken about in our conversations. A lot of people living with bipolar disorder also live with comorbid conditions or dual diagnosis, as you may call them. Addiction has a strong link with bipolar disorder. OCD and personality disorders are also present in quite a few of the persons. In fact, I was also diagnosed as living with OCD, comorbid with bipolar disorder, only a few years ago, after years of being in the wilderness. Physical comorbidities can be due to lifestyle choices, caused due to the very nature of the illness, and also some side effects of the medication also. So weight gain is one of the major issues that many people from our community face, and in turn that leads to type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and so on. Many of the medications, and also depending on the mood phase, daytime drowsiness is a challenge that we have to deal with. Apart from the treatment, medication, it's also about the attitude that we have towards our condition, towards the recovery process. It's important to remember that recovery is not a linear journey. There will be blips in the process, and the whole problem is that despite all our efforts, and then this is the issue that people say that a person might say that, look, I'm doing everything perfectly. I'm very disciplined with my medication. I'm doing everything on as advised by my doctor. And then why is there a relapse? but that's the very nature of the condition. And this is another aspect that we need to accept and take in our strides. Therefore, patience and perseverance are key. For me, trusting my professionals, whether it is a physician, whether it is a specialist in the physical health domain or my psychiatrist, I think this is crucial to the process, because then it helps eliminate the doubts I have about the treatment process. As I said, there are always chances of relapses happening despite our doing all the right things. So it's important to catch an episode before it blows up into a full-blown episode of severe depression, or hypomania escalates to mania. All right. By the way, in brief, you would be, I think most of you would be aware about what depression looks like, that intense sadness, lack of interest in life, being demotivated, helplessness, sense of hopelessness, not feeling pleasure in any activities that you would be earlier on, and even suicidal ideation in the more severe stages of depression. On the other hand, mania is all about the euphoric phase of bipolar disorder. It's at the absolutely other spectrum of the mood disorder, where energy levels are elevated, the spirit is high, my self-confidence would be exaggerated. I would have wrong beliefs about my capabilities, literally delusional about what I would be capable of. Even beliefs that I am I had some superpowers, I'm gifted more than what is the realistic scenario, and so on and so forth. And it can lead to indiscretion. All right. So you can imagine the devastation that these kind of episodes go to this extent, what it does to the person and families. Therefore, to catch these episodes at the nip it in the bud and prevent escalation is so important. So change in sleep patterns is a straight away, sort of a sign of impending mood episode happening. It might not always be so, but it's always important to be cautious and sort of share this kind of a development with one's practitioners. Energy levels, as I said, they are also very strongly linked with the mood phases. So changes in energy levels also can be an indicator. I advocate maintaining a mood journal to our community people, especially for those people who do not have family carers who are observant or well versed with the illness, and the person is left to fend for his or her own. So the signs to look out for in depression, as I just shared, is these might be the earlier signs, the milder signs: despondence, listlessness, withdrawal from social life, and inability to feel pleasure, inhibition, lack of drive and energy, aloofness. Key symptom can be drop in academic or performance or in work output, which is difficult to pin on to depression or any other issue. It might be just be pinned as a lack of effort on that person. On the other hand, in the elevated mood phases, what do you look out for? Spending excessive money is a sign of hypomania, higher energy, tendency to speak more, verbosity, making of ambitious plans and projects which are difficult to fulfill, need to socialize more.
Sorry, can we ask Red Me to mute, please, because he or she is disturbing. We can't hear. Red Me, please mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lorna. And there can also be indulgence in addictive substances during that time. And in fact, that can precipitate a mood episode in turn. Now, there are two sides of the coin to this. For me, my psychiatrist must be communicative. He or she must devote enough time to me during a session. Uh, im- it's important to impart psychoeducation to the person and family, because it's easier to sort of handle a known devil than an unknown one. And the psychoeducation part of it should comprise of the prognosis, the treatment, the kind of treatment that is available, and of course the side effects of the medicines. So, for instance, my psychiatrist was very open about all these aspects, and that helped me develop trust in him. And then in the process going forward, I never questioned his judgment. It's also important to encourage a holistic approach that goes in parallel to the medication. So medication is of course important, but lifestyle changes that I had described earlier help in several ways. Psychotherapy is already touched upon by Dr. Janardhan Reddy, and because it helps in developing coping mechanisms with the several issues that we have, tools to overcome cognitive dysfunction, for instance, relationship issues that might crop up with living with the condition, and other peripheral issues. I talked about what I would expect from a psychiatrist, but it's also then the onus on me to be sort of compliant on several aspects, in terms of several aspects. And that would include, in terms of medication, being regular with the medication, not experimenting on medication without consulting my psychiatrist first, or with without his advice. Even I was guilty of surfing the net excessively, trying to discover more about the illness. So being self-informed is good. It helps us be better armed. But we need to be discreet about whether the source from where we are gaining the information is a reputed source or a dependable one or not, and whether we have the capacity to understand the information that we are gleaning from the internet. Therefore, any doubt that I would have, I prefer to clear it with my psychiatrist, and I think that is an approach that would be a healthy one for any of the individuals living with this condition. Yeah, patience is a superpower, absolutely, because people go to a psychiatrist, treatment begins, and then people start saying that it's been 2 months of treatment, 3 months of treatment, and even then I am not seeing any benefits. Let me share this. It took me 10 years after my treatment began for me to reach stability. That is the extent of patience needed. Of course, that is not in all the cases. Each person's journey is very different from the other person's. So, but that is the extent of patience one needs to display. My story led to the creation of a peer-led community, was what is said to be one of India's pioneering peer support communities, known as Bipolar India. So it was set up in May 2013, essentially as a website to just disseminate information around bipolar disorder, create more awareness around it. It led to conversations, people started commenting on it, and that is how a community originated. So what do? We hold the World Bipolar Day conference. We conduct peer support meets. They happen in offline form every month in Mumbai. That's been happening since 2016. And we also conduct online meets for the Pan-India community that the Bipolar India comprises. In fact, we have a meet scheduled tomorrow. Tomorrow, a person with lived experience of OCD is going to share her story.
Slides are not moving. Is it only for me or for others as well?
I think it has got stuck.
Okay, okay.
Vijay, are you there? Perhaps some network problem. I think he has a network issue. I noticed that even on WhatsApp, he's not able to receive my messages. We'll just wait for 5 minutes if you don't mind.
Mr. Vijay is just joining. His internet connection got
So I've had a problem with
back.
my
Okay.
mobile, my Wi-Fi, and I connected through my mobile hotspot. Yeah. All right. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry for this glitch. I was figuring out what went wrong. Sure, yeah. All right. Yeah. So we are essentially a peer-led community, as I said, and we do have mental health professionals on board in the form of Dr. Milan Balkrishnan, a psychiatrist, Havovi Bhagwagar, a psychologist, and Zinat Jahan, also a psychologist, who are there to guide us, engage with us in sessions on specific topics, also take part in our conferences. Bipolar India community, by the way, now is around 800 members pan India, and I don't know what somebody's done this to the slide and used annotate or something. I don't know. Somebody's done this to the slide, or should I just stop sharing and start it again? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this is better. Yeah. So India community is around 800 members. Out of that, family carers is a key component of it, because in the Indian context, especially, a large part of the care responsibility falls and onus falls on family members, and it being a chronic journey, uh, they need their own levels of support and insight which the community tries to provide to them. So we have a dedicated community for them, known as Family's Nest. And we emphasize on the need for self-care to the carers also. As mentioned, healing in brief a little bit early on. So our approach is time as a regular practice, exercise, daily exercise, at least 5 to 6 days a week, nutritious. By this, what I mean by diet is a nutritious diet is a common sense approach to avoiding junk food, excessively processed food, and of course, avoiding substances such as alcohol and smoking as well. Sleep hygiene is also part of the discipline process. And there would be other modalities such as art therapy, inculcating hobbies which can nurture us. These are the holistic health experts on our panel. Shri Mitra is an award-winning nutritionist. Shrikant Shirsagar is yoga trainer. Brief look at what activities we do. This was an informal get-together that we had it. One of our unit members in if we talk about okay, for being exercise, doing it together with the community works even better. So some of our mates have been preceded kind of walks. So walking in the morning and followed up with the breakfast after.
Vijay, it's a little soft. Could you please enhance the volume?
All right. Am I not audible enough?
Now it's okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Was I logged out again,
I think so.
doctor? Yeah. All right. So a safe space where people can share their issues without being judged, that itself is therapeutic because people feel supported, not being judged. Opening up is known to create bonding within the community. The community itself empathizes and validates these experiences. As a whole, together, the community helps build resilience in the people who engage with us. And myself have been a beneficiary in many ways. We emphasize on an evidence-based medication model, supported by, of course, the holistic model. Persons who have already recovered to remission or are very functional in their lives automatically inspire the other people who are in a phase of struggle. Overall, it leads to better adherence and outcomes we have observed. We also do sessions on acts and policies which empower us, such as the Mental Health Care Act and the RPDA. We translate that into helping people getting disability certificates, advocating for parity in health insurance for persons with mental illness. We have been very vocal about that. Conducted a workshop on the Mental Health Care Act Mental Health Care Act 2017, conducted by Soumitra Pathare himself, along with Arjun Kapoor of CMHLP. As I said, it rubs off on the other people. It inspires them to sort of up their game, be more disciplined, dispels doubts that they would have about side effects of medications, and so on and so forth. And we have witnessed remarkable turnaround stories by purely, the process of people engaging in the community. I already shared briefly about these key strengths of ours. What are the pain points that people living with bipolar disorder generally encounter in life? So relationships are a big pain point, and especially so in terms of marriage. So we have had a lot of bitter separations and divorces. So that is a problem. Stigma and discrimination pervades in all walks of life, whether it is workplace, in society. Lack of access to mental health care, especially for those living in the rural parts of India, that's a big issue. Affordability is an issue for especially the access to therapy. And of course, livelihood opportunities, because that is difficult to come by for persons living with severe mental illness. We have also intervened in crisis by helping people, guiding them to the right professionals when needed, assisted in supported admission for families who are in distress. And in one stellar incident way back in 2019, our community entirely crowdfunded the hospitalization admission of a person for an entire month in Mumbai. And the bill was more than ₹1 lakh. So that is how that exhibits the solidarity the community sort of exhibits. We have got certain boundaries within the community. We do not allow talk around banned substances. We clarify that we are not experts on medication or treatments. That is best spoken to with psychiatrists. And when there is suicidal ideation, we try to handhold people, but then sort of guide them to professionals who can help them better. One of our key peer-led initiatives is Let's Walk Together.org, which addresses a pain point that we have observed over a decade's journey, that is sustaining livelihoods and careers for persons with mental illness. We have got a stellar advisory board in Amrit Bakshi, Soumitra Pathareji, Preeti Sridhar, Tasneem Raja, Tanya Dutt, and Puneet Bhatnagar. CMHLP, Manorati, and Mariwala Health Initiative are the collaborators on this initiative. This is what our website for the initiative looks like, letswalktogether.org. And the core team is drawn almost entirely from lived experience itself, and is a showcase of what people can do when they are functional, managing themselves well, and excel in their respective domains, work domains. This is the organizational structure. Mental Health Support Foundation is the apex entity, which is now a registered charitable trust. And underneath it are the two initiatives, Bipolar India and Let's Walk Together. I thank you for the patient listening, for all the glitches. I was logged out twice during my talk, and it might have disrupted the whole flow of the session. Apologies for that. So would like to end this talk with a thought I firmly believe in, that recovery is incomplete without rehabilitation and assimilation in society. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Nallawala, for that succinct summary on bipolar disorder and also the process of healing involved in it. If I may, before we ask questions, take questions from others, I will briefly summarize the session. I think you very rightly pointed up about the delay in the diagnosis, how people suffer for many years, often with depression before they get diagnosed as a bipolar disorder, and delay in the diagnosis and a big lag in the treatment seeking process might have an adverse outcome, adverse effect in the long-term outcome of an illness. I think you pointed out that very clearly. It obviously means not only underdiagnosis, even misdiagnosis is a problem. Often people with bipolar disorder are diagnosed as suffering from depression and given totally different kind of treatments. Sometimes they're diagnosed as schizophrenia and various other kind of medical psychiatric disorders. I think that was one important aspect that you talked about. You also emphasized the role of normalizing social and biological rhythms, particularly having a kind of a activity schedule which keeps you engaged, occupied during the day with activities that you love doing, plus also the importance of sleep in maintaining the recovery process. And it's very well known that sleep deprivation can precipitate a mood episode, particularly mania. And we emphasize the importance of good sleep. In fact, there's one point that I would like to tell my patients during follow-up. I tell them, make sure that you sleep well. So that's one important thing you talked about. But you also talked about many other issues. The most important thing is acceptance and support from the family and the community. And the role for early intervention. Increasingly, people are now talking about early intervention to the extent that now all international guidelines, although it's not nice to hear, talk about discussing with the patient, sufferer and the family about initiating long-term treatment even after first episode of mania, and not wait for multiple episodes to occur, because invariably in a large majority of the people, illness tends to recur. So early intervention might improve the prognosis, and also early intervention also might mean that less cognitive deficits because of frequent recurrences, because you really talked about the importance of cognitive deficits in the long-term course of the illness. You emphasized the role of medications and also talked about evidence-based medicine and unproven treatments. I know a lot of patients who, after recovery from their episodes, start saying, I take Ayurveda treatment, I take homeopathy, I do this, I do that, I do pranayama, yoga. You might want to do all that, but then those are not the proven treatments for bipolar disorder, at least as of now. Like many people with the diabetes, stop anti-diabetic treatments and do funny things and then have problems later. And I think you really talked about it in great detail. Also, you talked about red flags and prodromal signs. And I think the most important thing you told me is about that recovery is not a linear journey. It happens over a period of time, and you need to have patience. And of course, congratulations for that foundation that you are running. Great work being done. Let us take questions from people. I think they have sent some on the chat box. I'll just go through them. Okay. There is one question on schizophrenia. For today, I leave that. Question to Mr. Vijay: how do you deal with any shame? How did you deal with shame and guilt that comes along with the diagnosis, especially in terms of culturally, since there is still a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness in India, not just here, everywhere. It's a matter of degree. So how did you deal with that when you were diagnosed with illness?
A great question, actually. Yes, because we talk about stigma. So there are three facets of stigma. There is stigma which is about, that we typically talk about, where people ridicule people because of the severity of the condition, are afraid of dealing with people living with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia because of the stereotypes around it. The other stigma is trivialization of the condition, that you're too lazy, or you're not, everybody has challenges in life, you're not trying hard enough, things like that. And the third, for me, the most important form of stigma is internalized stigma, the question is referring to that. We internalize the issues that are happening, the perceptions from society, the behavior, how community treats us becomes a hardwired mentality for myself, and then it sort of affects all my decision making, my self-confidence, and many levels. So what helped me was my a lot of introspection that I used to do. Those pranayama sessions that I used to do were the sessions that gave me a lot of strength. It helped me build self-awareness, helped me gain more insight about what I was as an individual, what I expected out of myself. Also, I would say I had the good fortune in this, I mean, in a weird sense, I would like to share this, that I had lived for decades prior to my diagnosis with bipolar disorder also with severe asthma, life-threatening asthma. So even that had a little bit of shame in those decades prior, earlier, right? Even asthma was, that had developed resilience in me already. That had brought in a lot of discipline. And then I had learned to become more stoic and sort of deal with these issues more sort of at a pragmatic level, rather than get bogged down by them. Yeah. So coming specifically about how I dealt with the shame, I think I am very fortunate that I have not been sort of targeted by anybody in society. Maybe in 1,000 people, 2 or 3 people would have sort of looked down upon me because of my condition. I'm not saying this is how it extrapolates it to other people with mental illness, but that was my good fortune. And that is why I didn't have to deal with shame. People treated me with me as an equal. Right. So there was no shame. All that shame which was there was more of an internal thing, especially the guilt associated with what we do in mania, especially, all that ridiculous behavior that happens in mania. I hope I have answered the question well enough.
Thank you. There is a question on how does a person with no insight can accept his or her condition. I don't know whether the question is to me or to Mr. Vijay, but Vijay is a speaker, so I will ask this question first.
Yeah, I think, sir, you are better equipped to answer that. But I would say we face this challenge, and this sharing happens more by the family carers. That what for decades I'm trying to explain to my son or my sibling or whoever it happens to be, that this is what you need to do, and the person is still in denial. We call it that phase of denial, isn't it? Right? So it is either acceptance or denial. So I think it would also be related to the severity of the illness itself, which causes that lack of insight, right? Yeah, to my limited understanding. So rather than again judge the person for not having insight, we need to be compassionate, trust the process. That we know of people who have been in denial for more than a decade and then they see the light. So we don't know when that person will turn the corner also, right? There is always hope from our part when we are, carer to such a person. So your thoughts on it, doctor?
Yeah, I think you made an important point that severity of illness does matter. But I must also mention that just that you have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia does not really take away insight from you. Only a small proportion of people are not able to acknowledge that they have a mental issue for which they require actual treatment. The very fact that there are so many clinical trials done on bipolar disorder patients shows that they are capable of understanding what their condition is and participating in various kinds of treatment trials. The other issue is that, yes, sometimes at the height of the episode when you are extremely disturbed or, paranoid, like you said, have psychotic symptoms, that may not be the right time to really talk about, long-term course of an illness, the treatment. But most people are able to understand what their problem is once the intensity of the illness decreases. And that, I think that's the time when the psychiatrist needs to spend time with the patient and the family and try to explain how the mood perturbations are not just normal variations of mood and that there have been issues. And most people are able to accept that, yes. But yes, there can be sometimes challenges involved in it. Then there is a question on what is the right kind of a job for a patient with the bipolar disorder, what kind of psychotherapy can be given. One long question, but I think I summarized this into just 2 important aspects of it. Are there any recommendation for a psychiatrist in Bangalore? I think there are many psychiatrists in Bangalore. I will not really go into that. maybe you would like to really talk about what kind of jobs are suited for a bipolar disorder.
So, sir, so that's a great question, and I've been asked this a lot of times. So, in fact, there is hardly any barrier to doing any kind of job because just because you have that kind of a condition, it's important to realize that you are a human being first. This illness is a part of your human experience. If it is managed well, there is no real barrier to you to perform at a highest level of responsibility, functionality that a job demands. For instance, one of our core team members on the Let's Walk Together initiative is Asha Pillai, who was the CFO, Chief Financial Officer of Shell. And she's open about a bipolar disorder. All right. And now she has been assigned a global role. So essentially, the job profile is not a challenge. What I would talk about is excessive stress is a trigger for mood episodes, right? I mean, of course, almost every job is accompanied by some degree of stress, but excessive stress which requires a lot of relocation between cities for the work assignments. And one thing that I would emphasize upon is the day-night shifts kind of a structure for a job. Preferably, a daytime job is more suitable. Some people do manage to even work at odd hours of the night and still sort of maintain stability. But by and large, a job which adheres to a regular 9 to 5 job, and I would say also very important for organizations to be more inclusive, to make sure that people living with mental illness are more comfortable in executing their skill sets, so that environment is created. So we are just talking about the onus on the person and what the person is capable of. But if the environment is right, any person can flourish in that organization, I think.
Yeah. We must also remember that bipolar disorder is not one single entity. It is highly heterogeneous condition with varying degrees of severity and varying course and varying degree of response treatment and varying degrees of functional recovery after the episode remits. So what kind of a job is suitable for one depends upon many factors. It has to be individualized, but yes, but then most people with bipolar disorder can work like anybody else as long as their mood is stable and there are no significant deficits which can interfere with functioning. There is also another interesting question. How is psychotherapy different from seeing a psychiatrist? A very interesting question. I will answer this first and then maybe Mr. Vijay can add to that. Yes, when you see a psychiatrist, some psychotherapy occurs probably without really calling it psychotherapy, because some kind of supportive psychotherapy, what you can call, you ventilate, you talk about your difficulties, and sometimes the psychiatrist gives a different perspective to what you think is the problem. Maybe they change the way they point out to sometimes the negative ways of thinking. So some unstructured kind of support and therapy does occur in all encounters with a psychiatrist, provided psychiatrist has some time to spend time with you and not just prescribe medicine and send you off. But psychotherapy is much more structured. There are several types of psychotherapy, particularly in bipolar disorder. There are psychotherapies which essentially focus on changing the negative style of thinking that often accompanies bipolar disorder, what's called as cognitive behavior therapy. There are therapies which focus on social and biological rhythms, which actually play a very important role. And there are therapies which focus on how families can be involved in the long-term treatment. And all these treatments is done in a very structured way and does require time and done over a period of time. But I must say that most patients with bipolar disorder with simple, good psychoeducation and supportive psychotherapy do well with a empathic therapist who actually monitors treatment closely over a period of time. That's reassuring, because you cannot really do psychotherapy to everyone, and it may not always be required, but it does improve the outcomes. There's no doubt about it. You would like to add anything to that?
Yes, you sum up the types of therapies also, doctor, that would support for somebody with bipolar disorder and the need for it. And I can't agree with you more that speaking to my psychiatrist was itself a psychotherapy for me. And in fact, my challenge was I didn't have access to therapy way back then. So he was a sort of a therapist by default. So to me, the difference between going to a psychiatrist and a therapist is I go to the psychiatrist for the biological part of the illness. I mean, yes, I'm just sharing this very crudely. And there's the psychotherapist for the mind issues related with the illness, but the emotional level issues, and of course the cognitive distortions that doctor highlighted. They affect the way we perceive things, and perceptions affect our thoughts and behaviors as well. So, and also relationships. Issues such as relationships, self-perception, all these things can be helped better by sharing your doubts with the psychotherapist and seeking solutions from her.
Mr. Vijay, there's how unfortunately psychiatric practices become prescribing medicines by doctors and talking to you by psychologists. That's not necessarily be the case. For example, I think does so much of psychotherapy himself. Many times it happens because of a busy practice that psychiatrist has, or that somebody doesn't have an aptitude or a time to do therapy. Of course, there can be psychotherapists, but then now there are many clinical psychologists to offer therapy. So there are many options available.
Agree, sir. I mean, that's what, not a slide to the psychiatrist.
I'm just clarifying. People shouldn't think that we are psychiatrists are prescribing medicines, which unfortunately has become the case in many situations. I'm not denying that.
Right.
Yeah, and there is one question to me. Somebody has asked, is Medico Pastoral Society halfway home in Bangalore? I think MPA people can answer that.
Yes, if I may.
Yeah, Ajit, please.
Yeah, so MPA does provide, it's the first halfway home. And right now we do have vacancies. So if you're interested, please get in touch with MPA. Our administrator is a very good resource person, Mr. Bhaskar at MPA. And we have a website. You can contact us through that place. Then I also take the liberty of using the mic to say something more. I think there are a lot of psychiatrists for whom their medical identity gets threatened unless they write a prescription. And they rush to write a prescription. I mean, they're probably very well grounded in psychopharmacology, and they will write a prescription. In fact, there's a comment in the chat section which says too many psychiatrists don't counsel at all. I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
Like you said, sometimes there's a time pressure, and in that context, what Vijay has suggested, that go to a different person for therapy, might be a good strategy, but acknowledge that therapy is necessary. That sometimes is totally denied to the individual. And I know of at least a few good psychiatrists, otherwise good psychiatrists, who emphasize the biological nature of the illness. One slide from Vijay has lingered with me. The whole thing is as if psychology is not biology. Psychology is very much biology. The whole science of ethology studies behavior as a biological phenomenon. I think
those kind of distinctions have lost meaning anymore, other than the debates which used to occur in men's hospital in Imans 40 years ago, but there are not much relevance now. Right, Ajit?
Yeah.
So
there's one thing I wanted to say.
To add to that, sir, we also have had community members where the psychiatrists have specifically told them not to seek psychotherapy, that it doesn't work in bipolar disorder. So we are going to the extreme other extent. Forget about not recommending it, but they actually dissuade them from going to seek psychotherapy. That's also reality.
There is a comment and do family members, caregivers require help? Of course, that's what I think Mr. Vijay was talking about. Whether counsel is recommended for caregivers. Yes, I think involving caregivers in treatment is a very, very important aspect of treating any diseases, including psychological illnesses and bipolar disorder. Then there's a question to me. What do you believe is the key to communicate effectively with clients suffering from any mental disorders? It's a very profound question. There is no one single answer for that. I think most important thing is empathic listening and trying to understand patient's perspective and distress. And they have numerous questions about the diagnosis you make, its implications, treatment. I think that process has to occur. And what you call as that actually leads to a good therapeutic alliance, and then there is everything else is possible. But there is no one important thing. But if there is one important thing, I think is empathic listening and trying to put yourself the patients who try to understand their problems and help them to the extent possible, because you don't necessarily always have the perfect solution for all problems. In fact, most patients appreciate your effort, not necessarily the outcome, because they know that you are not superhuman and you have answers for all the things.
There's a question about environmental factors.
Yes, I've just come to that. Is there a role, do environmental factors and surrounding play a role in triggers or lapse during in bipolar disorder? My answer probably is that is definitely yes. Definitely yes. Not just bipolar disorder. I think this is an issue with most psychiatric illnesses. Environmental factors, life events, stressors, they do play a role, because people are extremely stable and on treatment for years together, decompensate when there is severe stress which is not managed, or a significant life event or something happens in the environment. It is during those times that they require help, and perhaps psychotherapy also prepares them for handling these kind of issues when they see somebody over a period of time. Yes, definitely yes. I mean, anybody else, including Vijay, please can answer this question.
Sir, I would like to add there. In fact, for me, it was a contributing factor in manifesting of the early symptoms, besides the biological loading, as we would call it. My parents got separated when I was 5. It was a dysfunctional family, and I have seen early violence in my family before that. Even that before the age of 5. Seeing the lot of disruption and the difficulties that my mother sort of raised me with, all those issues did have a bearing on my emotional framework in those 3 key formative years. So environment, of course, does play a big role, and so does nurture. I mean, if you are nurtured well, then that can be a protective factor. So we can talk about adverse factors like what I described. And I did have the benefit of nurturing factors also to balance it. We cannot just present a lopsided picture, can we? Yeah.
But it's true that bipolar disorder is highly heritable illness. There's no doubt about it. There's so much of work on genetics and biological base of illness, but then, like Ajit mentioned, psychological factors are no less biological. I think there is a point. Sakina Nimbuchola, she would like to say something directly. Yes, Sakina?
Yeah, hello, doctor. This is Sakina. I've been your patient for long in NIMHANS, so not being affected by bipolar, but primarily OCD. And I have felt environment has played a major role in my treatment. Like whenever I've been under supervision or under a psychiatric care, or especially in NIMHANS, it has made a considerable difference to my symptoms and my OCD management. And recently, even living abroad by myself, there were many changes. But coming back to the home environment always triggers back. I don't know why this has been a pattern for many years. And the only way I feel is to go out of home. But somewhat living in the house always brings back those obsessive thoughts. And I know I have always been asking you this question, and you've also always advised you need to live independently. But this is something which I have noticed in OCD very strongly, that when you're in the same environment with the same people in the same atmosphere, you tend to become more obsessive. And when you're in a different environment, even alone by yourself, it is manageable. Is it somewhat true for everybody?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into the details of why you relapse when you go home. We have discussed that. I think we will. There are different reasons why and different ways in which environmental factors can play a role, and it's not unique for any one particular illness, but then it can vary from person to person, and the reason it can be varying. So yes, I mean, the answer is, for you answers can be different, but then for somebody else there can be different answers. But yes, environment does play a role. Are there any bipolar disorder support groups in Bangalore? I am not aware. To the best of my knowledge, there is no support group in Bangalore, I suppose. So Vijay, do you have any idea on that?
Well, chapter there in Bangalore. And interestingly, NIMHANS has started its own peer support work in very recently.
And the bipolar support group? Bipolar
Not
support group?
specifically bipolar support group, but it's a peer support group. I think generalized one. That's very recently started. That's there. And we have a chapter. It's a fledgling chapter. I'm not saying that it's very active, but we are growing gradually. Yes.
Vijay,
Ajit,
Jana,
you wanted
can
to
I,
say something? Yeah, please.
maybe you can collaborate with MPA to see that we have a place where we can meet. Start a support
Fantastic.
group for Bipolar India.
Fantastic.
Bangalore can be at MPA. We will find somebody
Brilliant.
who will
Brilliant,
be an
sir.
anchor person over here.
Appreciate that. We have fine peer mentors there
So
who
with
can
our,
take up
we'll
that
invite you
kind
to
of.
our managing committee sometime. We are about to finish our annual year after our general body meeting. Maybe we can think of
Great,
this.
sir. Great, sir. We'll take follow-up.
Jana, there's one thing I wanted to raise, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
One of the reasons for family strife that happens with bipolar, two of the reasons. One is irritability and violence, which has not uncommonly gone on to severe strife and divorce. The second thing we tend to skirt around in this country generally, though we are much more liberal today than we used to be, sexual matters. Because in the manic phase, heightened libido causes a lot of problems, including infidelity, different sexual adventurism, and that can be very, very devastating. I wish those could also be touched upon in the otherwise exhaustive presentation.
Absolutely right. So we have had even divorces on just like you touched upon, Doctor, divorces from the sort of aftermath of a manic episode where person has dalliances with various partners. The spouse comes to know about it, and that tragic this thing split happens, right? And I have heard about, I think, one case of violence involved in, not from directly from our community, but from externally. I have heard of one case where such kind of escalation, undesired escalation has happened. Fortunately, in my own case, I never crossed those kind of boundaries because I guess, even in mania, promiscuity is not a sort of a sign in all cases from what I have surmised. Am I right, Doctor? It comes across very strongly in certain individuals, and it might be subdued in other people, which can still be reined in. It can still be reined in with the impaired level of insight during those times. Of course, the insight is not really full on, but.
Yeah, there are several questions on OCD. I will not take them up because there's not a session on OCD. But there's one interesting question: why is it so hard to diagnose bipolar disorder? I will say my part. Maybe Vijay can add to that because he has gone through that. Bipolar disorder actually is one of the easiest diagnoses. When you have a very classical mania, when you are hyperactive, talking more, grandiose, expansive, don't sleep, or hyperactive, or on the go. And which is usually different from the usual self. This is something that even every medical student learns within a week of joining psychiatry. So in one way, it's very easy to diagnose. But why is it hard to diagnose? Is because many times bipolar disorder starts with depression and mixed forms of both depression and mania. And in children, sometimes symptoms of mania and hypomania, particularly when they're very young, are not easy to differentiate from other problems like attention deficit hyperactivity or contact problems in childhood, or when you're also abusing substances simultaneously, you don't know whether it's bipolar disorder or a substance-induced problem. And typically what we know of mania is someone who is very high, happy, on top of the world, but many times irritability is more typical feature of a bipolar disorder. But also being paranoid sometimes, which is not uncommon in mania, makes you think that you have schizophrenia. So I don't want to take a class on to diagnose bipolar disorder, but yes, a classical bipolar disorder is easy to diagnose, but then there are various variants. The most commonly talked about is bipolar disorder gets underdiagnosed in people who have depression. Sometimes, many times, milder forms of bipolar disorder get treated as depression. I think that's the most commonest thing that people talk about.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, my experience resonates a lot with what you just shared. Even the depressive episodes, I didn't understand that as depression when I was a kid. I thought I was just losing my mind to me. But when I was just before my diagnosis, the first issue began when I met a physician. I was in a mixed mood phase at that time, rotating between mania and depression. He saw me when I was severely depressed during that phase and put me on to antidepressants. And then that led to a full-blown manic episode.
Yeah.
So and I don't blame the physician, because if it could be missed by even a psychiatrist, right? I mean, so you can't blame the practitioner. And the other aspect I would like to share from lived experiences, how we narrate our symptoms. Our narrative also essentially, because it's all based on the symptoms that you people assess what I am going through, right? So if I'm not able to narrate what I have been through in the past or even in the current phase accurately, and especially if the patient comes across in a fairly stable phase at that particular point of time, wouldn't that lead to greater challenge in diagnosis? Even families are sort of not, well versed with the symptoms of mental health condition, various disorders, and are not able to describe these. For instance, I missed out on my OCD all these years because everything I used to put in as an umbrella under the bipolar sort of diagnosis. So until I clear my doubts with my psychiatrist, how is he going to pinpoint that? That okay, these are very clearly not bipolar disorder, but these are traits of OCD. Would you agree with that, sir?
Yeah, I mean, OCD and bipolar disorder can coexist in about up to 10% of the people. Yes, but OCD has a very typical classical features, unlike bipolar disorder. What really happens is, before you are diagnosed as bipolar disorder, you would have had many episodes of depression, and there is no one diagnostic sign or a symptom of depression which makes you think that this could be a bipolar kind of depression. Till you develop a manic episode, or when you develop some kind of a switch with antidepressants, or there's a very strong family history of bipolar disorder. So sometimes it takes a couple of episodes for someone to realize that it's actually not a usual depression, but a bipolar type of depression. So these are anyway inherent challenges in diagnosing and treating patients with psychiatric issues. Like I said, there's no perfect answer to this, but yes, if you're treating depression which keeps recurring, then you should think of bipolar disorder in mind as well simultaneously, and then look for other things. Yeah. If any more questions, otherwise I would hand it over to the organizers. Yes, Ajit, you are muted, Ajit.
Somebody called iPad have raised their hands. I think it's Dr. Kalyan Sundaram. I'm not sure.
Yes, it's me. Can I?
Miss something? Yeah.
With your permission, Ajit, can I?
Jana's permission. Jana's the chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, sir. Please.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation by Mr. Vijay, and also a very succinct, clear, clarified communication from Dr. Janardhan Reddy, which is his hallmark. There was never hesitation, clarity in communicating what is right, what is not possible, what is happening. I think it's been a very enjoyable session. And a couple of points, I think the last one you mentioned, recurrent depression. My take on this is, whether the recurrent episodes of depression, if you take a clear history, you'll always find a very brief hypomanic phase, which is often missed out because patients and the family feel it's come back to normal. I always tell them, who is the comparator for this individual? The patient himself is the comparator of himself or herself. Does it fit into his pre-morbid state, or it's slightly more? You need to carefully tease it out. I'm sure Dr. Reddy and Dr. Ajit will agree with me, because if you take a clear time-consuming history, you'll find brief episodes which quickly turns the recurrent depression into a bipolar diagnosis. I think all other points were very, very well covered. Again, I've had a few patients who have been diagnosed as sociopathic behavior. One need to realize it's actually a hypomanic episode, which with disinhibition and sexual predilections, which have landed them into serious trouble during the episode and post-episode into depths of depression because the insight comes crashing onto them. I also agree with Dr. Reddy when he said, do all patients have lack of insight? No, not true, because they do have insight. That is why, despite the hypomanic phase, they don't challenge you and say, not take medication. They still do take medication because you spend time explaining. The critical point is spending time. The more you spend time, the more they are likely to continue the treatment rather than disappearing with not taking treatment. If you spend time, which is especially for the psychiatrist, the busy work, spending time and explaining, I think that acts very therapeutic in their long run. I think it's a thoroughly enjoyable session with Vijay's presentation, his insight into the problem, and also involved in the, getting on with the starting a bipolar society, and Dr. Reddy's, as usual, crystal clear clarification on many points. One last point is, Dr. Janardhan, I think with your experience in IMANS and head of the department and with the special interest in bipolar, I think we should go ahead and somehow try to see that there's a bipolar society in Bangalore, which has to happen. Several patients have asked me, is there a place where I can go? I've always been very disappointingly not able to answer in a positive way. I think Ajit has come forward to say something about using the NPA. I think with your large repertoire of professional help that is available, if that is something that is possible to happen it quickly to create a kind of a bipolar support group, it will mean a lot to not only patients and their families and to professionals too. Thank you for giving me the chance to say once again, thanking MPA for coming forward to do such an excellent program. Today has been one of the best I have attended. Thank you both.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vijay. It's one thing talking about a bipolar disorder as a psychiatrist, but it's another thing to listen to someone who has lived through that illness and also has insights to offer how to manage and handle, how to take care of oneself. Thank you so much for that lucid presentation. I will now hand it over to organizers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Nallawala, for an intriguing lecture on polar journeys, the highs and lows, lived experience, and self-help in bipolar, and sharing your expertise, insights, and experience with us today. Your lecture has broadened our understanding, perspectives, and left a mark on our collective consciousness. We are grateful for your presence, your dedication, and your unwavering commitment to improving mental health and social well-being. I also thank Professor Y.C. Janardhan Reddy for having chaired the session. Thank you, Doctor. It was a very interactive session. At this time, I also request the audience to reach out to us on our website. If you have any further questions or comments, the website has been shared in the chat box. Yeah. As we have reached the end of the session, I welcome Dr. Jayanthi, Senior Psychiatrist and the Honorable Vice President of MPA, who has been associated with MPA for over 2 decades. Sir, I thank you for your presence and request to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chaitra. You've already done half my job by thanking Vijay and Professor Janardhan Reddy for their excellent contribution to today's program. But I'd like to officially place on record, Vijay, your readiness as soon as I reached out to you to give a talk to us. It was a very hearty response from you that I recall. And the offer to start Bipolar Bangalore with our place as the Center for the Self-Help Group in Bangalore for Bipolar. Please take it up seriously. We will find a key person within MPA to tether this down so that it doesn't remain vague. And your presentation today was really elucidating for somebody who's on the other side. We always get professionals to talk to us about different illnesses. We have occasionally had self-help people. We've had Ratnabodhi come and talk to us. at other forums. And Nirmala has also talked to us. But to speak specifically about bipolar, it was indeed a joy to have you and to have you share your experiences, including the facets of bipolar that you have gone through from a very, very young age. It might not have been easy long ago, but today your sharing will give courage to other people to come out and talk about their condition and to seek the right kind of help. Jana, as usual, when I asked him, he just wanted to check because there was supposed to be a CME program happening in Kashmir. Jana is always a speaker in great demand. But he said he's available and he gladly stepped in to chair today's session. Today is a first for us that we're having somebody from outside MPA chair a session. Jana, I urge you to join MPA so you now become one of us.
Thank you.
That will also foster bipolar Bangalore to a great extent. I speak on behalf of my president, Dr. Joseph George, and the rest of the managing committee when I extend a thanks to all the people who have joined us today to participate in this very fruitful and informative session. Thanks to the speaker as well as the chair. Thank you all for having reached out to us from across the continents to be here for today's session. I'd like to thank the staff of MPA, not the least Chaitra, who did the mistress of ceremony. I don't know how it sounds. Master of ceremony doesn't sound quite right, but also the people who sang the invocation. This is a tradition with MPA that we are always beholden to our maker and acknowledge. Our sessions always start with prayer, whatever your theological orientation might be. To trot a cliche, would be failing in my duty if I do not thank Ganeshan and Nawaz, representing Micro Labs, who have always been with absolutely no gain to themselves beyond being a part of us. So standing by in the technical aspects of these Silver Jubilee lectures. We've now completed 19. We'll move on to the 20th, about which all of you will hear soon. This has been indeed a electrifying session, and I wish all of you a great weekend ahead of you. Thank you for being here, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us this evening for this wonderful program. Please visit and follow us our YouTube page where the recording will be posted soon. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Vijay.
you to the chair
Jana.
also for
Bye.
so masterfully conducting the session.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You held it all together, sir.
Thank you, Ajit, for bringing me in. I enjoyed this session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, sir.
Vijay and Dr. Reddy for
Bye, everyone.
the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Ajit, also.
We'll keep in touch.
Thank you enough. And I'll take you up on your offer. We'll connect on that, Doctor. Yeah, for the Bangalore initiative. Thank you. Can I leave the meeting now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're playing the good host, and Joseph George and I will stick on till everybody else disappears.
Eunice, thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I've
Eunice
learned a
is
lot.
joining us
It's a
from
pleasure.
on Nagaland,
Yeah, yes, sir.
master counseling student. And
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir.
Sharat Saushalia, also master counseling student, Saramu. And Sam Gunwan is here. Hi, Sam. Sam, how are you? Okay. All right. Bye-bye then.
Bye. Thank you.
Hi, Sam.
Bye, Ajit. How are you?
All right.
Nice to see you. Did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Sam, you can leave now. Dr. Nalini, you can leave now. Eunice, you can leave now. I'll be the last to leave once I say everybody's out. Eunice, you could leave now. Thank you for being here.